by the Christian County Republican Party and the Christian County Young Republicans. My name is Matt McGowan. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the city for allowing us to use the council chambers tonight, for Mr. Darrell for assisting with the setup for tonight's event, and for Thomas for guiding us through the program. In this segment, we will have the Republican primary candidate for Magistrate District 7. As Mr. Russ Guffey is unopposed in his primary, our format will be simple. We'll have an opening statement followed by a question and then a closing statement. Mr. Guffey, whenever you're ready, your opening statement, please.
All right. First off, I'd like to echo the sentiments and thank the Christian County Republican Party for these candidate forums. I don't want to sound like I'm overreaching here, but given the changing demographic of our county, specifically our voter registration, I think this is important that we hear from anybody and everybody from both sides of the table, so to speak. So it is nice to have this forum, and I greatly appreciate you all allowing us to have this time. Secondly, I also echo Hopkinsville and the City Council. Thank you for letting us use this beautiful new building that we have. I think we should use it like any one of our public buildings as much as we can. We as taxpayers have paid for it, and it's nice to be able to get the use out of that. So I greatly appreciate all of your time and your efforts to put this on. My opening statement is pretty simple. It's really who I am and why I have chose to throw my hat into a ring that a lot of people think you're crazy for doing so. I think you have to have a passion for the area, the community, the people in which you live in order to get into politics. You know that something is going to be brought up about you, or you know that a lot of things can get muddy, and you have to outweigh that with what you want to try to do to help accomplish what you feel like your constituents want, whether that be in your ward or your district or whatever office it is that you're running for. And my platform is, and I hope will always will be, what I have on all of the literature in which I pass out. District 7, even unbeknownst to me, before I actually put in my name for this race, is where I've spent every day of my life, with the exception of obviously my time when I was away at college. And the more that I started looking at District 7 and seeing the impact that it's had on me, that's really when I made the decision to try and also have an even further impact on it. And with each point of contact that I've had throughout my 40 plus years of living in Hopkinsville and Christian County, I also realized that each one of those stops along the way are really the pillars of my platform. My first home, for example, was out in the country. It was a rural home in a neighborhood, but we didn't have internet. And one of my first platforms is broadband fiber countywide. If you look at the world today, there are more and more people that are working from home, whether that be because of COVID, or that be because of their jobs, or whether that be just because of life in general. It is going to become more and more important that people are able to have internet accessibility. The other thing that I run on as far as the county is concerned is finishing what we have started right now and making sure that every road within the county is paved. I mentioned this to a couple people before. Growing up, people would come out to my house and they would always joke that we had some of the best golf cart paths anywhere because they were so narrow. And what we have tried to do, and what the county has done actually a great job of doing thus far, is getting those widened and getting those paved. We're almost there, but I think that's something that we have to continue to do. My first home as an adult was in the city limits back right off of Sibley. I think affordable housing is a must. I am a firm believer that this entire community is interconnected in perhaps ways that a lot of people don't think about. You know, housing is connected to education. Education is connected to manufacturing. Manufacturing is connected to, workforce development. Workforce development is connected to on and on and on. But if we don't have homes for people to live in, the population is not going to grow. You've heard time and time again that over the last several years, our population has actually decreased by over 4%. Part of that is simply because it's not attractive enough in the sense of people can come here and look at multiple houses to purchase. We have to streamline things better. We have to make it easier on contractors and developers to be able to come into this community and build houses. And in turn, we will get more people that live here. When you get more people that live here, obviously they fill more jobs. You fill more jobs, your payroll taxes increase. When your payroll taxes increase, not because you've increased the amount that they're paying, but just simply because you've increased the number that are paying that. That is what creates some revenue for a lot of the projects that we'd like to do. Water management and mitigation. This is a hot topic on a lot of places, but it's one of my platforms simply because my current home is in a neighborhood where multiple homes have been purchased and demolished by the city over the last 10 to 20 years. This is something that we have to be proactive about. This is something that we have to continue to make sure that we are going into areas, that we are cleaning them out. And a lot of people say, well, that's costly, or how are you going to do that? The interesting fact is, even within the state of Kentucky, we have certain things on the table as we speak. Potentially something like the National Guard coming down and doing their training here. They'll clean out some of these rivers as they're training at no cost to the taxpayers. These are the type of things that either we haven't done in the past or perhaps we haven't even looked at in the past, but I know that have been talked about in the past. We can put these into place, and water mitigation can take care of itself, and in turn the management takes care of itself. My business, smack dab in the middle of Fort Campbell Boulevard. Been a business owner for 14 years. I see several people out here in the audience tonight, and I hope there are several more that are watching who understand the travails of running your own business. The last 2 years have been, without question, the hardest 2 years of my life. And I think that speaks or echoes the sentiments of every business owner out there. I don't care if you're in manufacturing, if you're in retail, if you're in a restaurant, it doesn't really matter. But with my business being right in the middle of District 7, one of my other points is that retail retention and growth. A lot of times we look at the industrial sector. What are we doing with the retail? Folks, small business is the backbone of America, period. They are the #1 overall employer in America. We have to take care of those people, whether they have 2 employees or they have 22 employees or they have 72 employees. They're the ones that are showing up every single day that are providing us with the supplies that we need. This is something that I feel like we can continue to grow on. My wife's childhood home is in Pembroke. And this is something that if you look at where the industrial parks are, her home actually was on the back side of that, right off of John Rivers Road. And that industrial recruitment and the incentive packages that we put together is vital to the growth of any community because these are large employers. We've talked about the small employers. Now here are the more, the 100+ type employee jobs. And one thing that I'm very, very proud of that I had a firsthand part in was in 2006, 2007, 2008. I'm a member of a Rotary Club here in Hopkinsville. And we noticed that our student loan program, which is what we have been known for over 60 years, was giving out less and less loans because the federal government was giving out more and more loans. So we had to reinvent ourselves. And what we came up with after a couple of years of sitting down and crunching numbers and meeting with people and boards and schools and headmasters was the Rotary Scholars Program. This was unveiled my presidency year in 2008. Our very first class came out in 2012, and since that time we have seen hundreds of local graduates stay local, get educated local, and begin working local, many of which are now in our industrial park. The reason that's important is not just that it saved those local families money, but statistics show that those students who stay local, who are educated local, will, at a higher rate, continue to stay local, will continue to pay taxes local, will continue to raise their families local. This is why programs like this, at no cost to our taxpayers, mind you, are important and one of my absolute pillars that I'm running on. I have a second business, which is right on the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. A lot of the points that have been brought up this week, and I'm sure will continue to be brought up, are what's our tax basis? And what's our tax basis compared to our neighboring states? We have to become more competitive. We have to put things in place that are attractive not only for new residents, but let's not forget our current residents. And it's almost laughable to me when we get into, which is actually my next point, where my business is located. I can take a softball and throw it out my front door and land it on the base. Not that I would do that, Commanding General. I apologize for that. But if you think about it, our military deserve more support than anybody. Our military are the reason why we have the right to sit in this room tonight. Our military are the reason why we can sit in this room tonight safely. The fact that we are taxing their pensions is laughable. I understand that this is more of at a state level, but if we can create this grassroots effort, if we can do things and put initiatives in place locally like we've done with tax-free or tax-exempt on certain purchases, this is the trickle effect that we can have, and hopefully it's a trickle-up effect that in turn turns around and trickles back down to our local level and eventually at our national level, which is, I believe, what it needs to be. And then my last point, and you can see if you've seen one of my maps, is my very first job was at Novidale when that whole neighborhood and golf course was being built. I was up in the rafters when the first plane hit on 9/11. I remember climbing down, we were building the cart barn, and going out to somebody's car and watching on a small TV, or their van on a small TV, of all the news coverage that was going on. And I remember thinking at that point, the world has changed. Now, fast forward 20 years, I don't know that I envisioned the world would change again like it has now. But one thing that I do think has stayed the same is the need for leisure and consumer and recreational options like what Novidale was offering. It was just another golf course. It was another restaurant. And what I have seen over the course is if you do not have that population growth, there are certain businesses, there are certain restaurants, there are certain manufacturers that will not even consider looking at your community. So when I talk earlier about everything being interrelated, these are some of the things that I'm pointing to. If you have an educated workforce, they gain more money. When they gain more money, they reinvest or spend more money. When they spend more money, employers have more money to in turn reinvest. We've just heard about expansions that are going on in our community right now. Anything from $50,000 to $1.9 million. This creates jobs. This is what brings in new residents of our community, but we cannot do that unless we continue to kind of check off some of these things. So that is really the 7 points in which I'm running on, and I will gladly open it up to whatever questions.
All right, thank you, Russ. Our first question, James Franklin Clark is quoted, "A politician thinks of the next election. A statesman thinks of the next generation. How would you approach potentially unpopular decisions which you believe to be in the best interest of the county?"
Interesting indeed. I'll start by saying this, and this is perhaps sounds contrary coming from someone who's running for a political office. The first part of that quote, I honestly think there's too much politics in politics. I think there's too much right side, left side. There's too much, well, they want this, therefore I want this. I think if we can kind of look at what is it that our constituents want, and is it a viable option financially, then let's make that work. The second part of that, though, I think is really what kind of tugs at my heartstrings is not necessarily that I consider myself a statesman, but that I think of the next generation. I think that is the most important part of perhaps any of us as humans, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on. I'm a firm believer, and a lot of my literature says this. I think we're called to serve. I am a professing Christian, and I don't back down from that. Not in the sense of trying to be contentious, but in the sense of we have a calling to help other people, and if we're able to do so, I feel like we should. But a lot of the work that we are doing now is not for myself. I'm getting into this so that hopefully my kids have a better Hopkinsville and a better Christian County in which to grow up in. And if they have that, then hopefully they choose to live here. Selfishly, I'd love for my kids to live here so that I'm around them and hopefully around grandkids one day. But at the same time, if they are going to be here, I want it to be a safe, viable, vibrant community for them to raise their children in. And whether that be with my involvement in Rotary, whether that be in my involvement with the school system, whether that be my involvement, as a business owner in the community, employee benefits to me are the same thing, not just for my employees, but for their kids. Education is not just important for my kids, but hopefully for my grandkids. The next generation, I feel like, is why we're all doing this. And if we can train a child up in the way, so to speak, hopefully they do the same thing. We are continually passing on something to the next generation, and hopefully the generation after that, it's even more better and vibrant and a viable community for them.
All right, thank you, Russ. And your closing statement whenever you're ready, sir.
Absolutely. I would just reiterate here quickly, I do appreciate everyone who is here tonight. I appreciate everyone who is on either side of the aisle that we talked about. Most people that you speak with will tell you this is not an easy thing to do. This is not a decision that I came to lightly. This is something that I have considered for seriously probably 6 years now, and a couple of different offices that I felt like maybe were a good fit for me, but hopefully that I was also a good fit for them. But the timing in my mind wasn't right. And if the timing wasn't right, I didn't want to do it halfway. And I don't feel like most of the people that have put their name in the hat right now have done that. But I will close in saying this. Once again, regardless of what side of the aisle you are on, look statistically at the changing demographics of this county. Look statistically at the changing voter registrations of this county. This is not the Hopkinsville, the Crofton, the Pembroke, the Lafayette, the so on and so forth, the Christian county that it was 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. That's not my statistics. Those are facts. And the reason I bring that up is this. You look at my stances, at what I'm running on, at my voting record, at the signs I've put in my yard, and you see if those line up with the constituents, in my case, of District 7. I promise you, my views are more in line with the constituents of District 7 than anyone else in this race. And I will put that on record, and I will debate that with anybody until the last debate happens and we see how the votes fall. Thank you all so much for your time, and I appreciate everyone being here tonight.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our forum for District 7. Please stay tuned for our forum for Magistrate District 8, and don't forget to exercise your constitutional right to vote on May 17th. Thank you.